and I would say that it might be helpful, right, for your imagination so that we can think of alternatives, not to think of that sun, but there are other lights in the skies, especially in the pre-flood world, right? The antediluvian age had all sorts of myths and legends about huge other suns that are seen in the sky, basically, not just ours. Ours is the leftover sun. It's the final one. And the reason I brought that up is because they say that they shot the sun in the eye. Our sun today, that skylight that goes around our realm, doesn't have an eye. If you look up at it, it is an eye. It's just one huge circle, essentially, right? But it needs another smaller circle inside of it in order to be shot in the eye. That is where we get the term bull's eye from, because of that arrow shooting the cosmic bull in the eye. All right, so let's get back to where we were. He shot the sun in the eye. The sun was hurt and wanted to kill the father, but it changed its mind after hearing that he had lost his son. It decided to let the father and the son leave and to promise that there will only be one son. The son that had been shot in the eye gave some seeds to the father and to the son and told them that it will soon turn into a moon, and that if they follow the change of the moon's shape when planting the seeds, a harvest will come. Because of this arrangement with the moon, the Bunun people conduct their millet cultivation, seeding, plantation, weeding, harvest, and warehousing at different times in the lunar calendar. This is also, I believe, another reason why we have a lunar calendar as opposed to a solar calendar, because they would track both of the suns, or however many of the suns that they had at the time, across the sky. They would chart their movements. They would time how long they take. They did that with both of them. Even whenever one of them changed and turned into what we call the moon, they continued to track it. Sun shooting. We do not need weapons to scare the sun. Let's read about this. Compared to the aforementioned legends, in which the main characters tried very hard to shoot down the sun, the Paiwan sun shooting legend is more casual and accidental. The story goes that once there were two suns that sat low in the sky. That's another thing too, is the position, right? Whenever we go through the red sky event, the world depressurizes, and because of that depressurization, it affects the atmosphere. Because it affects the atmosphere so severely and direly, it affects how far away things appear to us. Just like if you were to focus on binoculars or to focus in or out on a telescope, it's the same thing whenever we change the conditions of the sky. We're changing the focus of what we see out there. So it appears that during the red sky event, the sky is like zoomed in. So everything looks like space is going to fall on top of us, basically. Okay. It looks like the cosmos have immediately rushed in just above our world. Like you could jump up and land in some other place. However, whenever the electromagnetics of our world go into a reversal, the sky is being seen as pushing back or retreating back into the heavens. And there are many myths and legends that refer to that concept as well. All right, two suns that sat low in the sky. Thus, the world had no nights and was very hot. Because there was no nighttime, all community members had to work without any rest. That's another thing too. After the apocalypse, I don't believe that people will rest. I don't believe that people, there's always anomalies and exceptions, but I believe that people are going to be full of energy. They'll be energized and they'll have no need for sleep for the most part. One day, when pounding millet, the Tokenivan accidentally let a wooden pestle bash into the sky, knocking one of the suns down. In doing so, the sky was also elevated. There you go. Boom. And there began the nighttime. So when the sky was elevated, that's when nighttime was introduced. Finally, people could sleep. Yes, that's the world that we live in today. People have to sleep because the energy is being drained out of our world and thus out of our souls and thus out of everything. So everything is very low power right now. We're using reserves at the moment. In addition to the Paiwan people, the Tao people also have its own similar sun shooting legend. There were once two suns in the sky. Here we go. Another two sun illusion. And because of their super strong energy, people did not need fire to cook. They only needed to put food under the suns and everything was done. One day, a couple from the Jimorod village, the red-headed village, brought their child to the mountain. I like how they say the mountain. They built a canopy to shield their kid from the sun and went to work in the field with a peaceful mind, while they cooked their food with the sun's rays. However, although their food was well cooked, their kid was killed due to the sun's strong rays. They were devastated. They hated the sun, and they point their fingers to one of the sons. They cursed and said, "You go to hell. You burned my son. Now you must disappear." The cursed sun was scared off and lost its heat and its glare before passing away. Since then, there has only been one sun in the sky. So that's another thing too, where they talk about how people didn't used to need to cook, right? There was no need to cook food. That's because it was the Garden of Paradise, right? That's the state that we return to. And when that happens, we eat off of the trees, right? Basically, you just go in. If you're hungry, you just reach up, grab some food and start eating. There's no need to cook anything in the world to come. Another side of sun shooting legends, the relationship between the sun and the moon. Now, this is where we start sliding off into shooting the moon and the moon theory. And what is the moon? And why are the sun and the moon so closely related? Why is it that the sun and the moon are the exact same size, okay, in the sky? Why is it that the sun and the moon follow the exact same path and move in the exact same direction? This is kind of rhetorical. I'm not really asking because I don't really want to hear any academic type of answers. I don't want to hear any mainstream answers. I've already learned those. I've mastered those. I memorized those. I understand how they work in academics, but I am not an academic. I'm a dreamer. So, there is a good reason, a very simple explanation, why the sun and the moon are the exact same size, why the sun and the moon are said to be related to one another, why the sun and the moon follow the exact same path, etc. It's a really simple explanation. Another side of sun shooting legends. In the aforementioned legends, the sun was turned into the moon after it lost its energy and passed away. So the sun turned into the moon, or a sun turned into the moon. But in the legends of the Puyuma and the Ami people, the sun and the moon are neither siblings or husband and wife. During a great flood, that should give you a good time frame of when we're talking about, everything was covered with water, including the sun and the moon in the sky. In the end, there were just 5 siblings riding on a hibiscus flower to the sea. Because it was so dark, the siblings decided to put one man and one woman into the sky to become objects that could provide light. The man became the sun, and the woman became the moon, and they took turns to shine on the earth at day and at night. So the moon and the sun are often seen as positive and negative, respectively, but those roles often flip. And it makes sense that they would flip. Sometimes the male energy comes from the moon. Sometimes the female energy comes from the sun. I believe that these are echoes of our past, when our electromagnetics of our entire world flips. When this happens, the world literally turns on its head upside down, okay? That's why many of you feel like the world is upside down. That's why many of you feel like the opposite of everything is true, because we live in an opposite environment. Everything energetically is the opposite of what it once was. Even the North Pole itself is really the South Pole, yet we continue to call it the North Pole. You know what I mean? That's just one example. Everything's all reversed these days. All right, so the man became the sun, the woman became the moon. They took turns shining on the earth. In the Ami legend, the sun is female and reflects their matriarchal society. Right? The dominant energy is female. Right now, the dominant energy is male. We are heading into a time where a queen will be crowned instead of a king. We will have more of we will lean more towards a matriarchy instead of a patriarchy. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that's how the law of balance works in nature. Now, the good news is between the extremes, which is the extreme male-dominated energy right now. Hamed, hey, thank you. We live in an extreme environment right now, male-dominated energy. At the opposite end of the spectrum, just before the next apocalypse, not the one that's coming, but the one after that, will be the extreme female. That's when you will have a matriarchy and a woman will be in charge, and goddess worship will be worldwide. Instead of God worship and male energy, it'll be goddess worship and female energy. In between that is the apocalyptic event. In between that is a neutral point. In between that is the time of peace, or the golden age, where you have more balance between the two. So sometimes we get these echoes from when the world was female dominated, energetically speaking, and also physically, because the physical follows the energetic, right? In ancient times, the sun and the moon were husband and wife, related to one another, the same family. They have the, okay, this is so insane. The sun, as the wife, is independent and outgoing. So the moon decided to leave the sun in order to pursue a better relationship. Nice, good job. After the leaving of the moon, the sun began to look for her own happiness. This is also the story of Lilith and Adam, if you're familiar with that one. That goes back before Adam and Eve. One day, she saw the slender bamboo named Pro and found him very attractive. The sun came down from the sky to pursue Pro, which is a stalk of bamboo, which is a beam or a column and that type of symbolism, and wished to marry him. But Pro did not like the personalities of the sun and rejected her, and the sun went back to the sky with regret. So this is the doomed love between two entities that cannot meet. They're not allowed to meet. They're not allowed to stay together, I should say. They're always pulled apart, right? Or one is seen as being in love with the other and the other one doesn't like them. After leaving the sun, the moon felt very lonely and came down to the earth to marry a bamboo with fewer leaves named Didadu. Okay, so the same thing's happening. Now it's the moon. The moon comes down and wants to marry this stalk, this beam of light that's symbolically bamboo. But this wife was still very outgoing and passionate. The moon then decided to leave her too and went back to the sky. Later, Didadu found that she still loved the moon and tried very hard to climb up in order to make up with the moon. The sky, however, was too high, and Didadu could not climb high enough. Since then, the sun and the moon have never got together, and the bamboo sometimes grows high into the sky, while at other times it lays low whispering. I want to point this part out. Since then, the sun and the moon have never got together. Okay, let's assume that's true. Let's just give it the benefit of the doubt. And let's ask ourselves a question that I love to ask myself. What are the implications? If the sun and the moon truly never got back together, what are the implications? Well, one of those is that an eclipse is not what we're told it is, right? Where the moon passes in front of the sun or whatever. Have you ever seen the moon actually pass in front of the sun? I haven't. I've seen eclipses. I've seen the moon out in the daytime and it's not disappearing because of the sunlight or anything. I have never seen the moon. Now this should be mind-blowing because it's so simple, all right? But imagine in your mind the moon, full moon during the day. I know it's weird to see it during the day. I already know. That's a whole video. But it can be out during the day. So imagine that same moon that you have seen during the daytime and the sun right there, like slowly, like, you know, people would be watching that. They would be watching the moon get closer and closer and closer to the sun, but we don't. We don't see that. All you see during a lunar eclipse is the sun. And then it just gets dark. And they're like, oh yeah, that's the moon. The question is, where was the moon right before that? It should have been right there in the sky. It should be visible. Can't tell me that you can't see the moon during the daytime. Ah, man. See, now I'm getting in my feelings about academics. All right, let's move on. Hold on, let me jump in the chat. Manage Downside is in the chat and says, J Dreamers, the $1 bill shows the eagle as the squatter man. Yes, absolutely. And it's actually more accurately the phoenix. But that's a good call. All right. Let's see. When others shut the sun down, we save it. In addition to the common sun-shooting legends, there are other mythologies handed down by the Tao people. They did not shoot the sun down, but instead saved it along with the moon. After I'm done reading these presentations, I'm going to show you on my little diagram a theory that I have as to the origin of both the sun and the moon, if you want to stay tuned for that. Once upon a time, when there was a young couple, the man was called Brother Dajian, and the woman was called Sister Shwidu. They made a living by fishing. One day, the sky and the earth were shaking. Okay, let's stop right there. Time out. I love it when it says that the sky was shaking. All right, it gives reference to the sky shaking throughout many religious texts that I've gone over, and that is an interesting thing to me. That they say that in the exact same way, and at the same time that the earth is shaking, that the sky itself will also shake. If we go back to our ancient cosmological views of the earth, the sky and the earth are connected. So when one shakes, the other shakes. Physically shaking. That's not metaphor. It's not just a grand expression of, oh my God, the earth was shaking so much, so it looked to them like the sky was shaking too, because they're stupid and they think that because they're moving, the sky's also moving because their vision is moving. You know what I mean? Like, I don't buy that. I do buy that the earth and the sky are connected. One day the sky and the earth were shaking, and the sun and the moon disappeared. This is the apocalypse. All of these are memoirs of the apocalypse, things that we have forgotten, and that's why I feel it's important for me to go over them, even if none of my viewers subscribe or believe in the things that I'm sharing with you or whatever. I do this for me, really. I want this remembered. This is important to me, and so I share it with you. So, while there was this worldwide earthquake happening, the sun and the moon disappeared. This will happen again. All of these things, all of these legends, this is why it's important. You're learning about the future right now, not hearing about the past. I mean, you are doing both, actually. But the exciting thing is, instead of just going, oh, that happened a long time ago. Oh, that's just in the past. If you start connecting the past with the future, all of a sudden the past becomes detrimental to surviving the future and to making it into the future and prophecy and other things. The world became dark and plants could not grow. One of the reasons I believe that plants cannot grow immediately after the apocalypse is that, one, it takes time for that earth energy to spread out and refill the world. Okay, so it takes a certain amount of time. I believe the ancient cultures counted how much time it took before the Holy Spirit was breathed onto the earth and our energy was given back to us. Another thing is that worldwide earthquakes cause liquefaction, right? All of the seeds and all of the plants and everything are sinking down into the mud while new things are being brought up. So the world becomes a swampy, boggy mess for a time until it dries out. And then all of a sudden it's more of a desert, a huge desert world, especially when the oceans are removed. The world became dark and plants could not grow. People were suffering, and thus this young couple decided to search for the sun and the moon. Many people have gone on a search for the sun and the moon, right? After a long journey, they found a cave. Interesting. At the entrance to the cave, an old woman told them that the sun and the moon were eaten by two evil dragons, and that she alone was forced to cook for them day and night. The two evil dragons were scared of nothing but the gold axe and scissors, which were at the foot of Ali Mountain. Ali means my God, too, just so you know that, or my mighty one, or my leader. It's the same as El, basically. Eli, right? Ali. Thus, the couple went to Ali Mountain with a spatula. And okay, hold on. Let me take it seriously. The couple went to Ali Mountain with a spatula and fire fork, which were given to them by the old woman to dig out the gold axe and scissors. Reminds me of this video game I used to play called Golden Axe. Once they had dug them out, they killed the evil dragons and sent the sun and the moon back to the sky. They ate the eyes of the evil dragons, which later turned into two high mountains. Now listen to this. Pay special attention. Whenever they in the ancient world, when they write something down as being lofty or high, when it's already known to be lofty or known to be high up, that means it's exceedingly high, like abnormally high. Okay? So two abnormally high mountains from which grew a palm tree for the sun and the moon to hold the sky. So we've got these two exceedingly high mountains way high up, which also Mount Meru is being seen as the most exceedingly high mountain, right? So it follows suit that the mountains near Mount Meru would also be, you know, exceedingly tall. And out of the tops of those two exceedingly tall mountains grew palm trees. These are other beams of light, just so you know, that held up the sky. Many legends abound about how once when the sky was too low and the people felt like the sky was falling and it was going to crush them and it was going to land on them and all of the heavens were coming down and meeting with the earth, that there was some sort of trees that grew to prop it up, or people erected poles and pushed the sky up further and further. Legends abound. These two mountains that safeguard the sun and the moon. So let's think about the location real quick. Two mountains safeguard the sun and the moon, right? So the sun and the moon's origin, their home, their house, is somewhere between two mountains, the legends say. These two mountains that safeguard the sun and the moon, which are located on the two sides of Sun-Moon Lake, appropriately, if you know where that is, are now known as the Dajian and Shuidu Mountain. Each fall, the Tao people hold a ball and dances like the couple holding the sun and the moon. Let's continue on. If you're just joining us, by the way, we're talking about the sun and the moon and shooting the sun and the moon and why these legends talk about. And it's not just the ones I'm reading. These are all legends from a limited area in our world. These legends are worldwide. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of legends that include some aspect or form of the same ones that we're reading now, where an arrow, a sacred arrow, a special arrow, a saved arrow, a forgotten arrow, you know what I mean? Whatever it may be, usually an arrow of light or power is shot at some sort of threat or beast or monster, or the place where the sun is, or the place where the moon is, or the place where they reside more specifically. The indigenous legends of sun shooting demonstrate the impact of the power of nature on life and reflect the cosmic concepts of the indigenous peoples that everything has life. Imagine that. How nice and simple. Everything has life. Isn't that nice? I just like to see that. The indigenous peoples thought that everything had life. Pfft, we're so much more advanced than they are. They clearly don't understand. You know what I mean? Oh, geez. So, just like people, when the sun was shot, it bled. The sun, as the source of energy, will therefore burn people to death with its blood. In the Hao Yi legend that we are more familiar with, the ones that we started off with, where there was 10 suns and they were shot down one by one, or 9 of them were, the moon and the stars were not mentioned. The indigenous legends are filled with imagination and are logically presented. At the same time, the difficulty of the sun expedition was enhanced to teach later generations about the hardworking and persistent spirit of their ancestors. The legends of the sun shooting told by different people are all based on the idea of 2 suns, and the plots also help us to further understand the worship rituals and lifestyles of indigenous peoples. All right. Now, imagine, I'm not saying this is correct. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's 100% or real or true or accurate or fact or anything like that. I'm saying this is in my imagination based on my research and my path so far. Okay. So let's imagine that this is Terra, that this is land, and our local piece of Terra or land inside of this bubble, inside of this dome, is called the Earth. So here we are. Essentially, it opens up in the middle. It's probably not that big. That's humongous. But it opens up in the middle and it leads to the inner recesses, or the hollow portions of Terra, or the hollow portions directly under our world, which we would consider to be the hollow recesses of the Earth. Now, because of the shape that surrounds our local region, being in the bottom of this crater area, if this is electromagnetically charged as a bowl shape with a hole in the middle, Then going back up here to David LaPointe's diagram, which, by the way, he's unaffiliated with anything that I talk about. He doesn't probably even know who I am, so it's not like he believes any of my views or anything like that, but I believe that his information is very valuable. I find it to be. All right, so let's check out this diagram here, right? So here we would be in the very bottom of like a deeper looking canyon or cave or whatever, right? Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to make it move. Sorry, one moment. This is weird. All right, hold on. Sorry, one sec. I didn't mean to do that. Let's make this bigger. Dang, this is crazy. All right, well, anyways, I'll leave it right there just so I can move forward. All right, so here's Terra. Terra extends upward because we're living in one of the craters, right? In one of the divots of the land of Terra, which is where many places that are habitable are formed for beings like us. Why? Because its very shape by nature creates a protective barrier, an electromagnetic dome, known as the confinement dome. It confines things within and keeps things out. That dome acts as a protective barrier because there's much electromagnetics out there in the heavens that would love to ground themselves to our world, causing a permanent electrical storm all of the time. So our electromagnetic dome protects us from those things because it pushes plasma away. Plasma is repelled by strong electromagnetic force or magnetic force, right? Now, if you turn this image sideways like this one, as you can see, it's no stretch of the imagination to see the bow shape that is existing here. Now, see, how do I move that up? I don't know. I'm just going to leave it alone. Leave it alone. All right, let go. Dang, this computer's not enjoying my commands. All right, anyways, I'm so sorry. All right, so let's go back here. So here's our crater, the yellow portion, okay? Here's our electromagnetic dome, or our magnetic barrier that keeps out the plasma and other things that live out there in the heavens. And it's because of the shape that our dome or our sky is created. Okay. So let's take a look at that shape here and let's zoom in. Now, if you can see, I have put another dome right here in the middle in the shape of a bow and arrow. Hey, Jen, welcome. So this would represent the center of our world. This would represent where the North Pole is in our world. Why would there be another dome at the North Pole underneath our grand dome, our larger dome of the sky? Let's go back to that image of the North Pole. This one right here. Let's see. All right, cool. So here is an image of the North Pole, the land at the North Pole. As you can see, it's sitting in a crater. That the entire land at the North Pole is circular in shape because it is, in fact, a crater. And that is where the Garden of Eden was said to have rested, with 4 rivers subsequently coming out of the middle of it. Now, if this crater shape also is electromagnetically charged, as I suppose that it is, it would stand to reason that it would contain its own dome or its own electromagnetic barrier, right? That protects the Holy Mountain, that protects Mount Meru, acting as the Ark of the Covenant, or the Arch, or the electromagnetic arc, right? So there should be a little protective dome over this area, at least when there is a strong electrical charge running through it. Right now, I'm not so sure if that electrical charge would be there because all the energy is going down into the earth and not coming out of it. So it very well may be that that dome is no longer there right now, which means if you can get there, you would be able to have access. Chad, hey, welcome, Chad. All right, cool. So if this one has a little dome around it, right? And then we go back to our image here of our world and we zoom in. That would be this bow. Now, this is the bow of all of these heroic characters. This is the bow that they're speaking of, not the sky itself, but this is the bow that shoots straight up to hit the moon. Now, where is the moon in this picture? Let me go ahead and draw. Bear with me. My computer is frozen. So weird. Okay, now, before I show you where this the origin or the home of the sun and the moon are, let's back out and recap real quick. We have determined or talked about the idea and the possibility that this shape right here, this magnetic bowl shape, which acts as a Terra crater, we could call it, right? That this is responsible for the bubble that is made inside of it, of force, of magnetic energy. All right, so let me show you what I mean here. We could take this one. I think I can move this one. We could take this one and we can superimpose it right over here. And as you can see, it fits perfectly. You know, things are not drawn to scale or whatnot, so you have to excuse that. But that is the example that I make for the creation of our dome. Why is that? Because at first, there is no physical barrier. At first, everything starts off spiritual. Everything starts off electromagnetic in nature, you could say. So we have a magnetic invisible barrier that goes up. The plasma is repelled by that barrier, smashing into it and creating water as a byproduct. It creates a liquid byproduct. And that liquid instantly freezes and gives you a physical dome that conforms to the shape of the water. I mean, conforms to the shape of the electromagnetic confinement dome, giving you an ice dome, right? Solid, pure ice. That's the exact same as glass, basically, because it would not have any impurities. So now you have an ice dome, you have an ice barrier that is created because the plasma smashes into the magnetic field. So let's remove this and let's talk about the plasma apocalypse. The plasma apocalypse happens whenever the world depressurizes. It depressurizes because it is now contained and it will be uncontained. It will burst. The containment field will go down and the container will explode. Where will it explode? All of that energy is going to go to the apex, which is the top, which is right here. All of the weight of our atmosphere is being held in right now by a magnetic force. All of those gases that are repelled by a strong magnetic current are being pushed back in at us, causing pressure in our world to increase. However, one day, that barrier will go down. Let's see if I can do that. All right, boom. So that will cause a hole in the sky to open up, okay? Right above the North Pole, right at the North Star, basically. A hole in the sky opens up, all of our oxygen and everything gets sucked out, all the air gets sucked out, well, not all of it, but much of it, right? Lots of it gets sucked out and it depressurizes the world. Now we have a connection. Now there is no separation between the heavens and the earth. And then we've got the blue beam afterwards that shoots up from the inner recesses of the earth. The inner earth energy shoots up and it goes all the way up. Now, when that energy shoots up, that's an indicator that everything has reversed and that electromagnetic field has gone back up. Okay? When the electromagnetic field goes back up, remember we said plasma is repelled by that field. So that plasma will hit the dome from the inside and it will recreate and fix the damaged portions of the dome. So follow me here. What we're going to do is we're going to take this image right here. We're going to flip this upside down. We're going to apply the same principles as what created our sky to the sky itself, because now we have the inverted form of this right here. Same thing, but it's upside down. It's a bowl shape, it's electromagnetic in nature, and there's a hole in the middle. So whenever we zoom in on that, if I can do it, when we superimpose this, let me go ahead and actually put this on top here. All right, so if we superimpose this, what we can infer is that logically it would have its own magnetic dome right there in the center, right at the middle of the world in the sky. Why is that important? Pardon me. It's important because when this blue plasma hits that electromagnetic dome, it's not going into it. It's not going to go through it. It's not going to go past it. It's going to conform to its shape from the inside and it will wrap around, creating a dome under the dome. And it will split off into that Y shape that we have all studied so much, which is the Vav, or the nail of the world, right? The flux capacitor, etc. So it will now conform to that shape, and that water will freeze. And what that means is that directly above the North Pole, we possibly have, let's see, let's turn this one upside down as a reference point. We have this right here in our sky now. And that this dome up here has been covered and frozen, and that it becomes the moon, basically. That this right here becomes the moon. It becomes like the chandelier of our world. Now what we have to do is apply optics to this. If we think about the question, what are the implications, right? What's next? How would light act under these conditions? And so instead of light, so imagine that light comes from the plasma outside of our world, outside of the heavens, right? So the light is spiraling down, hits the dome, boom. The plasma hits the dome, I should say. The plasma is repelled, wraps around the dome, continuing to spiral. But the light does not. The light passes through the ice, and it hits the dome, redirects itself, and causes a focal point. That focal point is daytime. I'm just kind of drawing just to give you an example. Okay, cool. So now imagine this. At the top, up here is a crater at the very top. There's just a crater up there. Eyes wide open. Hey, good to see you. There's a crater. So what happens when that light hits this dome and is refracted? Well, it would project instead of creating a focal point, right? It would hit that dome and it would project. What it projects is an image of itself onto the night sky, or possibly waters that are up there floating around. I'm not sure. But it makes a projection of itself, which is the moon. The focal point where all of those rays meet is where the sun is. The projection is that of the moon, right? So this right here would be considered the house of the sun, or the house of the moon. This dome, this inner dome, is also what bursts and breaks open, which means that if this is the actual spot, the physical spot where the moon is projected from, because the moon that we see in the sky is a projection, it's light, it's plasma, but there is a physical representation of its origin, of where that light is coming from, right? So if this is the physical actual moon that does not move, that always stays in place, the light, the image moves because the plasma above is circling and spiraling around. And that's why you see the sun spiraling around the world, and the moon spiraling around the world, and the stars spiraling around the world, and everything spiraling around the world. Because that's what the plasma above is doing. It is in a vortex spiraling around our dome. When the world depressurizes, this dome breaks. Let's get rid of that. Yeah. So when the world depressurizes, that dome breaks open. And thus, the image that we see, the projection of the inner earth, the inner dome, I don't know what to call it yet. We see it breaking up there in the sky. We see that light, the projection, breaking in half, or separating, or opening, or a hole opening up inside of it. Which actually happened in Islamic tradition. In Islamic tradition, the Prophet Muhammad was arguing with some non-believers about the power of Allah, and they didn't believe him. And he said, "Ask for a sign. I'll show you." They said, "Okay, split the moon." And immediately the moon split. So they dropped down to their knees, as is appropriate when the apocalypse happens. Many people will drop down to their knees. Many of you will pass out. It will be seen as bowing in the presence of something greater. And the moon will split. And it has happened before, and it will happen again. So the moon can be kind of seen, the real moon, okay? So try to keep up. Sometimes I'll refer to the moon, and I'm talking about the projection. I should actually clarify. That's not on you, that's on me. I'll clarify from now on. So the projection moon is just that. It's plasma. Up there in the sky, it's a projection that comes from the light from the dome up above us, which is a dwelling place in the sky. because on the other side of that, it's able to be inhabited. Now, it's also possible that that moon, if it's a physical piece of the actual sky, and that's the piece of the sky that breaks, that moon could fall to the earth. That piece of the sky, acting as a huge chunk, craterous chunk of ice, could break off and float down to the world. And obviously it would melt after a time, but the moon could fall and hit the earth. Not the fantasy moon that you learn about in academics. Hey, Jared, good to see you, man. Jared just became a member. He's got a sweet Truman Show icon. I like that. Remember on the Truman Show, the man in the moon, right? All that stuff. So when you hear about this moon, visiting the moon and stuff, I'm not one of those people that thinks that it's just, when I hear anything from NASA, it's 100% lies, it's 100% crap and false and make-believe, right? I mean, I feel like that would be a little bit hypocritical of me to completely be devoted to make-believe and then not believe anything that is presented to me in the quote-unquote real world. I believe that there's some truth to these things that they talk about. I believe they can go to the moon, possibly. If the moon is the inside or the underneath portion of our sky and our dome, the moon's the furthest you can go. Like that's as far as you're going to get. Now, if you want to go to Mars and all that other stuff that's allegedly beyond the moon, you're going to have to wait until the sky opens. But that is my theory thus far. So you have a dome, a protective barrier that goes around Mount Meru. Okay. When that protective barrier is up, it will be difficult to get into that island, that circular island that is a crater island, as you can see right behind my shoulder, right? It's one we've been talking about. Let's see. What else did I have? What else? Was that it? I don't even know. Let me jump in the chat. What do you guys think? Hey, Hamed, thank you, man. I super appreciate the support. 13R12AD says, Jay, you should look at some of the work from Vibes of Cosmos. He has a bunch of stuff regarding the moon. Okay, thanks for the suggestion. What do you guys think of the theory of the presentation? Oh, a lot of this is super resonating as I watch Under the Dome, like the actual show Under the Dome. They have a dome. I don't know if you guys have seen that show. You got to check it out though. Like, it's so exciting for me to come to these revelations that I have on my own, or seemingly on my own, like, and then seeing the movie, and then seeing like Under the Dome or these other movies that I do, truth movies and stuff. Sometimes it's kind of mind blowing. Sometimes I'm getting really good at predicting what's going to happen in the movies because I see the patterns, right, that are revealed. So it's kind of mind blowing. In Under the Dome, they have a sky dome, right, and then they have like a little mini dome. And I told myself while I'm watching the show, they were looking for the source of their dome's power, the huge dome. And I'm like, it's going to be in the middle of your town, bro. It's going to be right in the middle of the town, I promise. And then I swear they're like, oh, look, right in the middle of the town. There's another mini dome with a black egg, by the way. See how Mount Meru looks like a little black egg, right? Same thing in the Stephen King show, Under the Dome. Let's see. We got Oramar Dez who says, Jay Dreamers, what are your thoughts on the moon eclipses that just occurred? Like, why does the moon change colors? So I think that the moon always turns red during the eclipses because I think that the light just on the other side of our dome is red, which is why the entire sky will turn red from time to time. And I'm still trying to work out how the eclipses and stuff work, but I'm sure it has to do with optics. So I highly encourage other people. Sometimes it's difficult for me to think that far into this because you have to create a lot of structures in the head. I don't have a lot of like physical visual things to go off of, and I'm a very visual person. So the eclipses and stuff, the moon turns red because it's seeping through some of the red light that is behind it because it's the dome above us, or if it is the dome above us, there's red light behind that. That's the red plasma that is waiting to come into our world. So we see the red. It's revealed from time to time during these blood moons or whatever. And then as far as like the actual changes, the light up there moves in such a way, I haven't figured it out exactly in my mind yet, but it moves in such a way that it goes over that dome. And so some of it it actually cuts off the projection because it's a lack of light. It's not a shadow. I mean, it is a shadow. But it's just a lack of light in that particular area on that dome. And so you can see it as it goes across. And I think that's what they call Rahu. Mars, hey, thank you. Super appreciate it. Awesome. Plasma Prophet says, Jay actually has inspired me for choosing my name. Oh, yes. I think you mentioned that before. I'm honored. Southern Bell Rising says, I was driving. I'll rewatch this. Okay. Suso, what's up, man? Says, I love the presentation. Always interested in your theories. Excellent. Excellent. Where is it on? Not sure what you mean by that. Managed Downside says, J Dreamers, if you look at your own face, it's literally a squatter man. 2 eyes, 2 balls, your nose. Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's a squatter man. Everything is fractal and follows after that pattern. We're created in the image of God. That's how they say that. Totally cool because you're able to listen to you. Right on. Good to see you and have you here. Maria Becos says, J Dreamers, I wondered where the moon was at the time that they claimed to walk on it. Not that I believe that they got to, but it's a question I have. This is a new theory to me. So first and foremost, I am a believer that where it was in a studio. Okay. What you saw on TV, I don't know. Like, okay, I'm pretty sure a lot of things are pretend on TV, and it's fun to pretend if that's your thing. That's fine with me. But I don't believe in that whole thing being a real story. Nah, I'm not on board with that. I believe that there are deeper truths behind what is presented to the public, and that for reasons unknown to most of you, they will not share those truths with you. You have to find them out on your own. Sage says, J Dreamers, watch the movie you talked about, something School of Good and Evil. Yeah, I saw that one. The School for Good and Evil. It's those are the 2 mountains that I was talking about, the anode and the cathode on each side. So in this movie called The School for Good and Evil, or whatever it's called, college, I don't know what it's called, but it's a cool movie. It's actually really cheesy, but the symbolism's really good in the movie. There's these 2 castles, which are mountains, which are these tall mountains that we talked about in those legends, right? One's the anode, one's a cathode, and they create an electrical arc between one another. And I believe that those are actually the first lights that come out too. I think that the first lights to come out are from those 2 witnesses, that they come before the main light arrives. Okay. The main light takes much longer to come out. So first you see Adam and Eve is what they are. First you see the positive and the negative or whatever. And at first they're the same. And they touch and they're vibing and everything, but then they're split by that central beam figure that turns them into male and female respectively. But all the symbol in that movie is all about that. They even have a spiraling tower, like right in the middle of these 2 castles that are connected by this bridge. It's the arrow, basically. It's the spiraling tower that goes up, and it's insane. It's like right in our faces. Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. I couldn't agree more. Engage. Now, I'm not saying that everything's fake, though. I'm not one of those people that is, oh, everything's fake. NASA is 100% lies, blah, blah, blah. No, they're not. I'm going to say there's truth. There's truth in everything, right? We just have to rework it and figure it out. So I do believe they shoot rockets up at the sky. I do believe that they have tried to crack the dome open on many occasions. Project Dominic. One of the omens of the apocalypse is that the days and the length of time in a day would actually shrink. It would get smaller and smaller. Welcome to my channel. I'm J Dreamers. Hello to everybody in the chat. Today we're going to be discussing the shortening of days, the prophecy of the shortening of days. Basically, it means that one of the omens that we can look for, if you're the type of person that studies eschatology and you're looking for the signs to see how close we're getting, that's one of the things that I've learned over time is not to, it's okay to try to like figure out when you think it's going to happen, but more importantly, I feel that it's been stressed to look and to watch and to read the signs and the omens. We've been given plenty of signs and plenty of omens for when the apocalypse is going to start rearing its ugly head, depending on how you want to look at it. So today we're talking about the days getting shorter and shorter. Some of you can relate to this. Some of you might say, man, last week went by quick, or last year went by quick. And it seems the more time goes on, the more we start saying stuff like that, like, oh man, last year went by quick. Or maybe you feel like there just isn't enough time in the day. There's not enough daylight. nowadays to get everything that you need done, and that when you go to sleep, you're almost waking up, prematurely. You haven't had your full night's rest or anything. I believe it's because the days are speeding up. So we're going to talk about many of the prophecies. We're going to talk about some of my own theories and my own perspectives on the subject. And then, of course, we're going to talk about what academia says about it too. Let's start things off with the Bible, and let's go to exactly where this prophecy comes from, which is Jesus himself. So he's walking around talking about, like he kind of casually mentions the apocalypse. I'm paraphrasing. And all of his followers are like, oh my God, when's it going to happen? Tell us. You got to tell us when are these things going to be? And so, he doesn't come out and say, oh, it's actually going to be in, 12 days, 10 months, or you know what I mean? He starts talking about the signs and what to look for. He says, when you start to see these things happen, the apocalypse is at the door, getting ready to show its ugly head. So we go to Matthew, the book of Matthew in the New Testament, chapter 24, verse 22. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Jesus says, if those days, he's talking about the days just before the actual event, if those days had not been cut short, no one would survive. But for the sake of the chosen or the elect, those days will be shortened. So there you have it straight from Jesus, that the days themselves will be shortened. Well, this forces us to take a little reconsideration of our geography that we've been taught lately, right? Because how does that work given the cosmology that we have? If the chat could just give me a thumbs up too, I would super appreciate it. Sergio, what's up? I see you in the chat. Yeah, just let me know if you can hear me, basically. I super appreciate you guys. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. So Jesus says the days are going to become shorter, right? So I was talking about how do we reconcile shorter days with our current cosmology, right? Because our days depend on how fast or slow our world is spinning around and spinning around, right? So if our days shorten, it means that the world would be, in that scenario, speeding up its spin, speeding up its rotation. I'm going to come back to that one. But another reference here in the Bible is Mark chapter 13, verses 14 through 25. I'm going to go ahead and read that for us. It says, when you see the abomination that causes desolation standing where it does not belong, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. I'm going to pause it real quick. I'm going to stop the quote real quick. Okay. Pause the quote. I want to talk about that real quick because I've been to Bible college. I've hung out in many biblical Bible study circles, and, I've studied to be a youth pastor and things like that. That was my path once a long time ago. So I also liked debating when I was younger. I was really into throwing around. I mean, it was really philosophy that I liked, but it turned into debating, unfortunately. Anyways, so there's a lot of debate amongst these communities as to what this abomination that causes desolation is, right? So I'm not going to come right out and tell you what it is, but what I will say is an abomination is something that is not natural, basically. So we're talking about something that is abnormal or unnatural, right? Something that is not normally seen in the natural world, right? So the abomination, something that is unnatural or whatnot, that causes desolation. So to make desolate means that it's getting rid of everything. Okay, it's cleaning house. It's clearing everything out. It's paving the way, essentially. So that is an abomination that causes desolation. Now, whatever this is that's being spoken of, they say when you see that where it should not be, and then it says, let the reader understand, let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, my perspective on this is that this is all cosmic electromagnetic phenomenon, right? Or plasma. And I'll go into more detail, but I want to finish the quote before I lose everybody. So when you see the abomination that causes desolation standing where it does not belong, let the reader understand. Let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the housetop go down or enter the house to take anything out. Let no one in the field go back to get their cloak. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers pray that this does not take place in winter. It almost sounds like there's an option there, like winter or something else. You know what I mean? Like he's basically saying, hope that the apocalypse you go through is not the winter solstice apocalypse, basically, because there's also a summer solstice apocalypse. All right. He says, pray that this will not take place in winter, because those days will be of distress unequaled from the beginning, when God created the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If the Lord had not cut those days short, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect whom he has chosen, he has shortened them. All right, so all of that, I kind of want to get back to the abomination that causes desolation, but we're going to circle back. Remember that, it's a little clue. We're going to circle back to the abomination that causes desolation. But basically, Jesus is saying the days are going to get shorter. Okay, it's not going to be a whole 24-hour day, which I'm sure at 24 hours, I'm sure it used to be longer than 24 hours. Actually, the further back in time we go, I have found, and my research shows, me at least, that days got longer and longer and longer during certain periods. Even if we go really far back, it seems like a day or daylight lasted for almost half of the year, and then for the other half of the year, the world sort of falls into a long winter or a nighttime. But I'll come back to that. All right, so let's see. I'm going back to the Bible quotes real quick and these prophecies about the days shortening. Let's see. So it says, so be on your guard. That means look out, right? Be watchers. Watch for the signs and the omens. Be on your guard. I have told you everything ahead of time. So he's saying, I'm telling you what's going to happen in the future. This is a prophecy. This is a prediction. But in those days following that distress, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. This all has this for a lot of you. This means that you have to rethink your cosmology, and you have to internalize it, and you have to make these things metaphor instead of taking them literally, or at least as literal as the person describing it could be. Right now, we go to the Old Testament in the Bible, where the sun is doing some funny stuff. Right, we're going to say that the sun is responsible for how long our day is, typically. So if we go back to the book of Joshua, way back in the Old Testament, in chapter 10, verse 12, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, sun, stand over Gibeon, and you, moon, over the valley of Ajalon. So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself upon its enemies. As it is written in the book of Yashar, or Jasher, the sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down for about an entire day. This I've always taken to be a literal account. I know there's many people that try to make that a metaphor. They try to internalize it, make it symbolic, etc. However, it seems to me, based on my own personal research, I'm good with the fact that I think that this physically actually happened, that the sun just stopped where it was supposed to be in the sky. And I've also read corroborating scriptures and writings and ancient historical records from people who lived on the other side of the world around that same time, where they talk about how the moon stopped in the sky and it was nighttime for an extended period of time, right? So I don't believe that the sun and the moon are these infallible, unchangeable objects. I actually believe they're constantly changing every day. It's just that we don't notice that change because, one, we're not paying attention. We're not watching collectively. And two, they're gradual changes and we get used to it. So it can speed it up a little towards the end of time. And then some people start to pick up on it. Other people, they dismiss it as they dismiss it every single day. All right, cool. Now I'd like to do some screen sharing. I'm going to take these pictures off real quick, and I want to show you some stuff here on the website about academics and what academics says the reason for the days speeding up, because they agree the days are speeding up, which is interesting news. All right, let me see if I can do this correctly. That is not it. That is not it. I'm in the wrong thing. My bad. Hold on one sec. Is that it? Yes. Okay, cool. All right, sweet. So I did a quick Google search. You could just kind of see it over here. I typed in, are the days getting shorter, etc. There's all kinds of articles from all areas of academics across the world. And it says, this is just one example. Earth's rotational speed has varied in the past, and the phenomenon is normal. Oh my God. I wanted to share that with all of you. Okay, let me show you. Okay, I don't even know who wrote this, but for me,